I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Yuba City. This is an agendized meeting for February the 2nd, 2016, slated for 6 o'clock p.m. If we could have roll call, please.
Mayor Buckland?
Here.
Vice Mayor Cleveland?
Here.
Councilmember Didball? Here. Councilmember Dukes?
Here.
Councilmember Gill?
Here. Councilmember Stan Cleveland will provide us an invocation to get this started, followed by Pledge of Allegiance by Wesley Ryerson and Joel Gale, two of our local Boy Scouts from Troop 30.
I want to thank you, O Lord, for this opportunity to serve the community, and thank you for such a great community to live in. It's a privilege, Lord Jesus, to be here. We ask you now to give us wisdom, which only you can have the full depth of wisdom of the decisions we have to make. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How many of you all are here from River Valley High School? It'd been easier to have you guys raise your hands if you weren't from River Valley High School. The three students that are standing in the back, I don't want to embarrass you, but I would like to have you come down and grab some seats down front, just because it's going to be a long meeting, and I know you have to report on this and write. There's writing utensils and everything else that are here. So, there's three seats right together. If I could get Chloe Gonzalez to come on down, we would like to recognize this young lady. It will probably take your dad. You hold that on that side so as not to block this young lady while I read this. We have a merit award for Chloe Gonzalez. We congratulate Chloe for winning the NFL's 6 to 7-year-old girl division for punt, pass, and kick national competition held in Indianapolis, Indiana. The NFL punt, pass, and kick program is a national skills competition for boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 15 to compete separately against their peers. Established in 1961, the PPK program is the oldest NFL youth football program. All participants launch 2 punts, 2 passes, and 2 kicks with scores based on distance and accuracy in feet. The best score from each activity is tabulated to determine the athlete's total. Chloe's award-winning distances are: she punted the ball 45 feet, 6 inches, threw a pass 41 feet, 8 inches. I think she's headed for the NFL myself. Much better than Brady did last week. And I'm a New England fan. Kicked the ball off of a tee at a distance of 46 feet, 2 inches with a total of 133 feet, 4 inches. On behalf of the City Council, the citizens of Yuba City, and myself as a mayor, we'd like to present you this commemorative award for your outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations, Chloe. As well as kicking, is there anything you want to say? I'm going to leave it to Dad then.
No, she doesn't want to say anything. She is a second grader at Lindcrest School. She wanted to say that she enjoys playing all sports and also individual competitions. And she enjoys a lot of girl things too, like dance and gymnastics and pink dresses. So anything else you want to say?
Thank you very much. Congratulations once again. Next on the agenda will be a presentation of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, presented by Mike Inamine and Michael Bissett. Mike is the executive director of the program, and Michael Bissett is the director of our engineering efforts.
Thank you, Mayor Buckland. Michael Bissett, of course, won't be making it this evening. I'm going to give a brief presentation. This is the annual session. This is the annual presentation that we give to constituent agencies of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency on what happened last year, what we're planning for next year, what's happening in the ground this year with regard to construction. Next. I'm going to make this kind of an abbreviated presentation and spend a little bit of time giving our audience a little bit of time on why the agency was formed and maybe a little bit of Levy 101 before I get into what I think is the meat of the presentation, what is what happened last year, what's going to happen next year. Next slide. So Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency is basically a partnership between 4 communities, 2 counties, and 2 levee districts. So Sutter County, Butte County, Biggs, Gridley, Live Oak, Levee District 1, Levee District 9 came together back in 2007 and decided to sort of join forces in order to advance flood protection projects. That's basically what a joint powers authority means. That's what was passed through an assessment in 2010. An assessment is essentially a fee that's taken, it's a fee that's voted on throughout all these communities in the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency area, and we use that money to leverage more money to build things, and I'll get into what that means in a little bit. So the goals of the agency are unchanged. So this slide is, for members of the council, is probably an old one. I have filled it out with some of the additional goals, subordinate goals actually, to our original goals of the Flood Control Agency as outlined in the strategic plan, and that's on the website for the public to look at. But essentially, the goals of the agency are unchanged, and that is to achieve 200-year protection for the sort of the yellow portion of the map from Yuba City north, and 100-year level of protection for sort of the orange area of the map in the south. Those are unchanged. But as we've reported both to this council and to the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency Board of Directors, there's a number of strings attached to those funding agreements, recent laws, and requirements leading to the subordinate goals that are underneath the 100 and 200 year. So next slide. Okay. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. I just want to mention and sort of highlight that there are 4 programs and projects that are in the news that folks are hearing about. Many folks in this room are going to be participating in directly. The first, of course, is kind of the big show, which is the Feather River West Levee Project, and I'll be talking about that in a few minutes. And that's the big construction project that is going on right now on the west bank of the Feather River. The second item is a Laurel Avenue critical levee repair. That's an important repair that's outside of the big Feather River West Levee project, the $300 million project. This is a new project that we just received funding right at Laurel Avenue, and we recently received a commitment of funding, and that's going to be taken off this year as well. So that's news. The third item is the Sutter Basin Flood Risk Management Project. That's a long name for a federal investment project. So typically projects are built by local agencies like us, Yuba City, and all of our constituent agencies, or they're built by the state of California, or they're built by the federal government. In the case of the big construction project, this is being built by Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, this partnership in the state of California. The third bullet indicates really the first time the federal government, well, first time in a long time, the federal government has decided to invest in the agency, invest in our service area, and so you'll be seeing a lot of advocacy efforts, and members of this council will be participating in some of those advocacy efforts to get appropriations for a federal project in the basin. And some of them, notably Mr. Cleveland, were part of that initial effort to garner the authorization of 2014, the Act of Congress. Feather River Regional Flood Management Plan, again, is another partnership, whereas the JPA is a partnership between everybody on the west side of the Feather River. The Feather River Regional Flood Management Plan includes not only our communities on the west side of the river, but everybody on the other side of the Feather River. So everybody from in Yuba County and Sutter County, Butte County, they've joined forces with us in the Feather River Regional Flood Management Plan. That'll be important because we had received another grant from the state of California to advance a couple of important efforts, including long-term O&M planning and some reform measures that we're seeking for FEMA regulation in deep floodplains. Next slide. So the rest of these slides, I'm going to be talking about the construction project, the work that's been underway since 2013. So these big design and construction projects to fix 37 miles of levee, and that's what we're doing with the Feather River West Levee Project, take several years from concept through actual construction. The project, this is just a map, and I know it's difficult to see that the different colors end with the northern reach, the green reach, and this is that all those colors delineate the west bank of the Feather River. Okay, so these are all the levees that protect communities on the west side of the Feather River from flooding from the Feather River. Now in the north, the project extends from Thermalito Afterbay on Oroville Dam all the way down to Star Bend in the south. That's a distance of about 35, actually it's more about 37 miles. And we're doing work on just about every reach of that levee, or just about every portion of that levee. The levees, when they were constructed, were put up by pioneer farmers. They weren't engineered, they weren't designed, they didn't use modern equipment. We have some pictures literally of mules and hand laborers pushing up dirt on the west bank of the Feather River. So there's no real design to these things, even though they've been protecting us for about 150 years from flooding from the Feather River. So this project goes back and sort of retrofits these levees and installs something called a slurry wall in most of these reaches, these levees, and I'll describe what that is, to sort of retrofit these levees so that they can provide adequate flood protection so the river waters don't either overtop or come through underneath the levee. So the project is unchanged. It's about 27 miles. We're in our third year of 4 years of construction. So we expect to finish everything on the 37 miles by the end of calendar year 2016, including the additional increment, the new project, Laurel Avenue, which is about a mile south near the confluence of the Sutter Bypass and Feather River. It's all 200-year level of protection. The Laurel Avenue, of course, is in the rural south, and that is just one increment, and it has to be combined with many other reaches in the future before it provides 100-year protection. The total cost of the project, and I'll describe what that project is in a little bit, is about $290 million. If you add the Laurel Avenue components, about $300 million worth of work. And it took place in terms of Central Valley construction in pretty much record time. I mean, if you look around the valley and see all of the projects that have been built over the years, you'd be hard pressed to find a project that advanced so much complex slurry wall work in such a short period of time. We started final design in about 2010, 2011, started construction in 2013, and we anticipate completing all of the construction in 2016. The way these things are funded is a little unusual. By unusual, I mean it's relatively a recent concept. So traditionally, the Corps of Engineers builds these things. This is the federal agency. The federal government comes in and they build these things. And it usually takes, no kidding, about 20 years from an idea to get through Congress to authorize a project, and then another act of Congress to get the money to build a project, and then a lot of time to do the engineering and design. So literally, when typical federal government projects you're looking at decades, not years, from beginning to end for a big project like this. So this is a little unusual in that it's being constructed by you, local agencies, and it's leveraging state money at the tune of about 76% of the total cost, matched by our 24% cost from our assessment district to pay for this project. But that's the way a lot of local agencies are doing it, and in combination with state money. So, next slide. So what are we doing? So for that 37 miles that you saw on the prior screen, for most of that mileage, we're not building new levees. We're leaving the existing levees pretty much where they are. So if you go out there before our construction project, and then you come back after we've done our construction project, you're going to see pretty much the same levee. It's going to be a lot cleaner, a lot neater, less vegetation, but it's going to be in the same place, same elevation. It's going to look pretty much the same. So what we're doing is, for most of the project, is we're constructing a slurry wall through the levee. And to understand what a slurry wall does, you have to understand why levees fall down. And there are a lot of ways that levees can fall down. But in the Sacramento Valley, if you were just to name the one failure mechanism, the reason that levees fall down is not because water comes over the top of the levee, not because water comes through the levee, right? So in this picture, you see the blue, which is the riverside during a flood event. Water comes up, doesn't normally come over the top of the levee and fail. It doesn't come through the levee. The way all the major levee failures that have occurred in the Sacramento Valley, it comes underneath the levee, which is kind of counterintuitive. You think of things falling down because water comes over the top or it comes through. That's not the case. What happens is, as shown in this slide, you have the high pressure of the river that shows up on the right side of the screen, and underneath the levee, there's a lot of sand and gravel. And this pervades the whole Sacramento Valley system. Sand and gravel is very porous. Water can get through it. And when the riverside of that levee, the water levels find that gravel and come underneath the levee, they pop up on the other side and they form something called boils, which is just basically water coming out of the ground. And this is what they look like. If you've ever seen a boil, and many of you have, maybe many of you have flood fought, it looks like water just boiling out of the ground. And if it goes unchecked, you have catastrophic failures. And just to give you an indication of the magnitude of those failures, in 1955, 38 people died when a levee failed at Shanghai Bend. That's when there were 10,000 people in Yuba City. Today there's 70,000 people. There would be many more deaths, far more people impacted if that failure were to take place today. And what's interesting, particularly about the 1955 failure, when we went back to look at this area that was, quote, fixed, it still had all this gravel and garbage underneath the levee that could lead to another failure. So we were happy to plug that up with the slurry wall. So all the slurry wall does, it's a 3-foot wide trench that's excavated, literally a 3-foot wide trench with the biggest excavators in the world. And it trenches right through the top of the levee, down into the foundation, and it cuts through all that porous sand and gravel. And then we fill it up with clay, which doesn't pass water. If you've ever played around with clay, it's a very impervious, it's like rubber. Clay and water and existing soils. And you fill this trench up that's 3 feet wide and literally 110 feet deep, up to 120 feet deep, fill it up with clay, and that presents a cutoff. So water can't go from the right side of the screen, which is where the river is, to the wrong side of the screen, the left side of the screen on the land side. Very simple concept. It's been around since the 40s. Very difficult to implement. It takes very specialized equipment. And of course, it's rather pricey, to the tune of $300 million for the cost of our project, which is about 27 miles of slurry wall. Okay. So, as for the highlights of what happened last year, and I'll just give a summary of what happened last year, what we're planning for next year, and some of the construction activity you'll be seeing this year. So we acquired Section 106, Corps of Engineers construction approval. That's a big deal because, as I've reported to this board before, back in 2000, or to the council before, back in 2014, we encountered significant Native American cultural sites. These are village sites, These are artifact sites. These were the remains of ancient civilizations dating back thousands of years. And as a result of that, much of the construction was halted in 2014. We had to revisit all of our permitting documents. We made way too many newspaper articles. There was, quite an interruption and cost associated with that. We've resolved those through 2015, and we're able to advance our most of our construction schedule in 2015. So all of that work, about 7.5 miles of levee, were fitted with slurry walls. A couple of miles of berms were constructed last year. That's the hardcore construction that was completed last year. And all of the associated right-of-way and permitting. The other big deal, it's a kind of we like to think of it as an achievement, but I guess it's more of a bureaucratic achievement, is we got a commitment from the Department of Water Resources for the balance of our funding. And that may not seem like a big deal, but it really is, that we now have a commitment from the state to fund everything from Thermalito down to Star Bend. Okay, the rest of this, there's two projects that I think the folks are going to be hearing about. They're up north, but they're still part of the Feather River West Levee project. The first is the Gridley Bridge Erosion Project. That's a project that was added on. It's necessary to achieve 200-year protection for Yuba City. So even though it's in Gridley, we don't provide that erosion protection, we don't get certification for 200-year protection. So that design and permitting is beginning in earnest, and we're tagging that on to the Feather River West Levee project this year. The second project is what's referred to as the Oroville Wildlife Area Flood Stage Reduction Project. That is a multi-benefit project that incorporates flood control, eco-restoration, recreation, and operations and maintenance benefits, and that's taking place just below Thermalito Afterbay on both the east and west sides of the Feather River. The other project, I mentioned Laurel Avenue, and I mentioned the state funding for the regional planning effort. So I'm going to this is my second to last slide. The work that we have going forward it's not the big production year where we completed 17.5 miles of slurry wall back in 2014. There are a lot of loose ends we have to tie up this year in order to complete the project. So we still have some issues to resolve with cultural resources in Sutter County. We're close, but we haven't inked the deal with the Corps of Engineers to resolve the permitting for the last gaps in the Sutter County work. We expect to close out all the rest of the project, basically from Thermalito down to Star Bend, to close out all the reaches of the project in 2016. There's several hundred encroachments. Encroachments is a long word for pipes that go through levees, for retaining walls that stick into a levee, an illegal building, and we've got a lot of those that have been placed on the levee, anything that affects the performance of a levee. So those things have to be addressed through this year, and there's literally about 100 pipe penetrations and a couple of hundred other encroachments. The rest of these pertain to the normal right-of-way permitting. I won't get into this. Right-of-way permitting, design, all the paperwork that we have to put forward and get approved by literally 48 permitting agencies or permits before we can move a shovel full of dirt. The Sutter Basin Flood Risk Management Project, that's the federal project, will begin in earnest, if only to start the federal advocacy, the lobbying to get appropriations into the president's budget in time for construction. Practically speaking, 17-18 it would be realistic to think that we're going to get into design through the much slower federal process. We are applying for a small community grant proposal. This is another state-funded grant program that allows state investment into the rural portions of the southern part of the basin, the rural portions that have so far not seen any investment in the levees quite yet, other than Laurel Avenue. And I talked about the Feather River Regional Flood Management Plan. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is my last slide. There's a bunch of things going on this winter, even though it's raining outside and we typically shut down. Levee engineers and constructors do all of their work during sunny weather, because during the winter we need those levees to be up while the river potentially could flood. So, for example, we don't excavate levees typically. Sometimes we do. We don't excavate levees at the beginning of winter season, just when we need them to protect us from flooding. So we have kind of a shortened construction season that extends from about April 15th to November 1st, typically. Now, during these drought years, we've been, quote, fortunate, end quote, in that because it's been so dry, we've been able to work into the winter. But that doesn't always happen. And so for this year, we knew this was going to be an El Nino winter. We closed up shop early. Well, we closed up work on time in November and didn't risk going to construction through the winter. However, we are still working, and we are replacing some pipe penetrations up in Butte County. We're working on one right now that we just started in Butte County, and will continue as long as the weather holds, and as long as Oroville is as empty as it is. I think the last time I looked at Oroville, it was only 43% full. The normal design permitting funding is taking place. I talked about the Feather River Regional Flood Management Plan, two important efforts, the FEMA Ag effort and the O&M costs effort. And then appropriations for Sutter Basin Flood Risk Management Project, the federal project, that's beginning in earnest. Actually, at the end of this month, there's a trip to Washington, D.C. Chair Gill will be accompanying us in that effort to acquire appropriations for the larger federal investment. We're hoping to get about $35–40 million out of the federal government to advance the rest of the project. I'm not going to talk about the last one. Next slide. Okay, so I think I've already talked about the challenges, the obstacles facing us. I talked about cultural resources. If you ever want to stop a project dead in its tracks, right of way, in my experience, is the easiest way to do that. If you can't acquire the property, the project just stops. We've been very fortunate in bringing to resolution before we had to go to court on 300 properties. The community has really come together over this project, and we're very fortunate, but we're not done yet. Federal appropriations I talked about. We have authorization. That's great, but you need another act of Congress, appropriations, in order to get the money in the bank so that you can build something. I talked about the Oroville Wildlife Area. That's planned to go to construction in 2017. Talked about O&M governance and funding. One thing that's taking place is there's a draft that I think the council may be interested in, is of the Department of Water Resources system-wide improvement program. So they've been planning improvements for the Sutter Bypass. And so you're going to get the first indication of what's going to appear in the 2017 plan in the next month or so. You're going to see what the department's thinking about the Sutter Bypass. That's my last slide, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Any questions of Mike?
To the mayor, not any questions, just a couple of comments to some of the students. Mike Inamini is our executive director for the Sutter Buttes Flood Control Agency, and prior to coming to work here, Mike was with the Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Water Resources. Close, yeah. When 1987, when we got evacuated and the levee broke in Marysville and the water started coming back, and Mike never shares his story, but Mike was one of the people that was actually on the levee with dynamite trying to blow levee so the water wouldn't start backing up or it would start going into the Bear River. So a lot of extensive stuff, but I think one of the things you mentioned, this is not any project that we've seen like in the past. And I can assure you everybody here in this community, as well as our partners with our agencies and everybody in Washington, D.C. knows about this levee project the Sutter Buttes Flood Control Agency is doing. Because by the time that as a community we passed our bond, we were so far behind Natomas and the rest of the cities that from 2010, and by the time we actually started to time 2016, here we are right now in 2016, majority of this project is going to be completed. And to have 200-year flood protection in some areas and 100-year flood protection in other areas, Laurel Avenue, I mean, that's quite an accomplishment to where this community was. And had we not been able to do this, this entire community would have been mapped into FEMA's flood map area, which means every single resident in this community as a household would be paying higher premiums for flood insurance, and there would be absolutely no development, no economic boom in this community. Everything would have come to a screeching halt. So, it seems like $300 million is a lot of money, which it is, but it was because of these community members that decided to tax themselves to put it in a share to get these projects completed. So
Great job.
Any other comments? The only comment I have, Mike, is thank you to your staff for the hard work that they continue to do. It's, 365 days out of the year that you guys are really working on this. I know you have some days off, but it never goes away. And it will be that way until this project is completed. And your dedication to that has helped move this project forward, and certainly to the existing board that helps support the efforts from the many different jurisdictions. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to one-up you and explain that these projects don't come together without elected representation. It takes a lot of political will to bring folks together, and the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency is run by 13-member board of directors. Many of this council have served on that volunteer position, one of their many volunteer positions, and it's to the board's credit that this thing has come around. It was a long time in coming, and I know there was a lot of naysayers when I was with the Department of Water Resources, and it's just a really shining example of how communities come together and do real work. So thank you.
Thank you.
To the mayor. Just a quick comment. To put this in perspective, this $300 million project is the largest project this community has ever seen and probably will ever see in our lifetimes and probably your lifetime. And so to get this put together from 2007 to 2016 has been a monumental task. And to put that in perspective, when the Corps of Engineers started their feasibility study back in 2001, by 2010, they were approximately 30% completed with their study to tell us what we already knew, that we needed to fix our levees. And when Mike talks about decades for these federal projects, just a study, if you extrapolate that out, would have taken nearly 30 years just to tell us what we already knew. And we said, we can't wait. And that's where the Joint Powers was put together, and this project has been completed. And it is one of the models now that the Corps of Engineers uses across the country to plan and fix these type of projects. And I want to thank you again, Mike, for your part in this.
Thank you. Moving on to public communication. You are welcome and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on items listed on the agenda when they're called. Public comment on items not listed on the agenda will be heard in item 4, and that's the appearance of interested citizens. Comments on controversial items may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select representatives to express the opinions of the group. Written requests. Do we have any written requests, Madam Clerk?
Were received.
Moving on to item number 4, appearance of interested citizens. Members of the public may address the city council on items of interest that are within the city's jurisdiction. Individuals addressing general comments are encouraged to limit their statements to 3 minutes. And we do have a speaker that wishes to make a presentation, and that's Gustavo Becerra, the interim executive director, Regional Housing Authority.
Good evening, Mayor Buckland and members of the council. My name is Gus Becerra. I'm the Regional Housing Authority Interim Executive Director. And I'm here tonight just for a couple minutes of your time to thank Councilmember Stan Cleveland for, as Mike has mentioned, volunteer position. Councilmember Cleveland served on our board for almost 9 years. And he brought a passion that I haven't seen in a long time. He was a big supporter of our projects, of our mission, and I just want to express my gratitude on behalf of the current board, which Councilmember Didball is now a part of, and on behalf of our staff and our communities for everything you brought to the table. Stan, thank you very much. I have here a resolution from our current board that I can leave here with Terrell. Or bring up to you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess I'll have to make a little comment on this. This is a bit of a surprise for me. Yeah, almost 9 years. And one of the things that I do like to say to the community, and the police will confirm this, that actually Richland Housing and all the housings that the Regional Housing Authority is over and manages are some of the safest areas to live and places to live. We had a couple of us that came on about the same time back in 2007 that we wanted to go to a zero tolerance on letting things slip and people breaking rules. And that was put into place, and they got the message very quickly because all of a sudden they weren't able to live in those homes when they would have 10 people when they were only authorized to have 5 in the homes that they had. And with that, they become the safest. And we just got a report, Preet probably saw that, on the number of calls that they had going into Richland Housing, and they went from in the 600 per year to the lowest year was 170. And that progression went down very quickly and stayed down. We had a little bump, I think it was last year, but they felt safe in there. Kids were playing out after dark. The senior citizens were actually taking walks at night together and not being afraid of being attacked or anything. And that's very difficult to do anywhere. So, and that was one of our goals, and making a safe place to live. And so that's our goal throughout the city. But I can say we did accomplish that with the housing authority. So it's only one of the good things that occurred during that time. Thank you, Gus, for your leadership over there, and everybody working so hard to follow through with the mission. So appreciate it.
We have one additional speaker card, but with Beverly Jamison's permission, we'll move that to number 9, where that's probably the most appropriate time for that to be heard. Moving on to bid openings, agenda item number 5, landscape maintenance services contract. This would be RFP 16-03, presented by Spencer Morrison, our accounting manager.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I bring before you the award of a contract for the maintenance of city and district landscaping. The city currently contracts for maintenance of landscaping within lighting and landscape maintenance districts, landscape islands and roadways, walkways, bike paths, and select city facilities. Services include litter control, fertilizing, pest management, weed control, mowing, edging, tree maintenance, and irrigation repairs. Since January 2012, the city has contracted with Crossroads Facility Maintenance of Sacramento, California. Finance staff has worked with community services and public works staff and issued a request for proposal. We received back 4 submitted proposals, and in order of staff's ranking, they were Landscapes by Stencil of Live Oak, California, Crossroads Facility Services of Sacramento, California, Dominguez Landscape of Sacramento, California, and Botanica Landscape of Yuba City. In addition to cost, staff considered the vendor's overall ability to provide the services required, quality, experience, and the amount of personnel that will be assigned to the city's contract. Staff recommends award of a contract to Landscapes by Stencil of Live Oak, California for $317,580 for 1 year, with the option of 3 one-year extensions to be authorized by the city manager. And this time I will request any questions that you might have, and note that we do have Dan Stencil in the audience tonight, and we also have Brad McIntyre, who was project manager and point on this effort.
Any questions from council of?
Sure, Mayor, just a question. We, in the past, I think a few years back, we did use services through Stencil. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how long ago was that? Is that about 4 or 5 years ago, roughly? How longer than that?
Yeah, maybe 8, 6, 7 or 8 years.
I just want to make a recommendation. I mean, not a recommendation, but just a comment. I know that in the past, this council has always goes by of taking the lowest bid. And that's what we did last time. We took the lowest bid, and I honestly believe we got what we paid for. I think the landscape services with the city stuff was disastrous. And I couldn't tell you how many times that I've made comments to our city manager and pointed out some stuff that needed to get done. And I think at least with this one here, with Mr. Stencil being in Yuba City, living in Yuba City, driving by the streets, it's definitely a plus. And I've seen his work, and he takes great pride and ownership of his business. So it's something definitely that I would support.
And my only comment is thank you for your past service to the city and fulfilling your contract to the highest level. And certainly there was a departure towards the cheapest. And I think that in light of the assets that we are trying to maintain, these are assets owned by the citizens. We did a disservice in many ways by departing to the lowest bid. And certainly I have struggled with many of the areas within Yuba City that have been the lack of maintenance, and to hear terms like we were just waiting for the shrubs to mature as an excuse for them not being trimmed and brought back into control to where they could continue to grow reasonably, to just absolute death of some of our landscape. We hope that we can move this back into these landscape areas that deserve the attention that it has seen in the past. And certainly, when we look at this, when I hire somebody to do work for me, I don't look at the lowest. I look at who can provide the service that I would like to have. And certainly, if I was going to hire somebody today, it would be Stencil Landscaping to handle that for me. So,
Through the mayor. One other quick comment. You mentioned that we got what we paid for. I would have to argue with you that we got less than what we paid for. So that is part of the reason why it is important to value these contracts and look who is going to give us the best value for the dollars that we're paying for. Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to go ahead and add to those comments is that sometimes when we go with the lowest bid, we tend to pay a higher price at the end, and that is not only just the quality of the work that's being served, but then we go back and have to redo the work, so it ends up being a higher price. So when we look at these contracts, we have to set up a criteria of what we're looking for as a community, and I think we're doing justice at this time to hire individuals who will see the quality that is very, very important to this community. And I think it's also very important that you are here in our community, and as you drive through our streets, you will see it yourself, and that brings in a greater amount of pride that you will hold to your job. Appreciate it.
Mayor? I'm kind of going to be somewhat the same, except that having it from out of town also, you give them a phone call and there's a irrigation leak, Sacramento, wherever they live from, they're not going to come up. You're here, we'll have the response that we need. There are categories of things that happen in government to where the ease of getting in contact and their response time has to be a weighted factor, to where when we do make bids that we have to remember to take and pay attention to those things that should be weighted towards quick response and investment in the community of living here and being able to get to it. So that's one of the keys we can look at other things as we go through in the future, other decisions. But welcome back.
okay. And just so I can clarify for the public, this was a ranking base. Stencil came out number 1 in the rankings, and that incorporated a number of pieces to include what the yearly assessment would be to perform the function that they were looking at. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to this? Seeing no one is moving forward, pleasure of the council.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move this item.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you very much. And welcome back to caring for some of the city properties. Moving on to Item number 6. This should be under ordinance, consideration of rezone number 15-02 to facilitate the development of a 172 multiple family residential complex, presented by Arnoldo Rodriguez, Development Services Director for the city.
Good evening, Mayor Buckland, members of the council. Arnoldo Rodriguez, Development Services Department. The item before you tonight is a continuation. Oh, that's not going to work. It's a continuation from an item that the council considered on January the 19th. At the January the 19th meeting, the council considered a plan amendment application, a rezone application, a development plan, and an environmental assessment, which would facilitate the development of a 172-unit apartment complex located on the south side of Lincoln, just west of Garden Highway. At that meeting, the council adopted the environmental assessment, the plan amendment, and the development plan. However, the rezone application does take two meetings to adopt. So at the first meeting, we introduced it, and here we are tonight for formal adoption of the rezone application. The project site itself, and also for the benefit of the community, the site itself, it's on the south side of Lincoln Road, just west of Garden Highway, roughly 550 feet. For reference points for the community members, your typical city block is roughly about 800 feet, so that can probably give you a pretty good idea. It's just west of there. The parcel itself, it's somewhat of an odd configuration. It has very little frontage on Lincoln Avenue, so when you're driving by, it's on the south side. I would call it a fairly non-descriptive parcel. It's relatively boring. Historically, there were some weeds there, some dilapidated homes which have been removed or in the process of being removed, and so the application itself, so the project itself would facilitate the development again of a 172-unit apartment complex, and that's largely in 2- and 3-story buildings. The rezone itself only covers a very small portion of the overall site. The site itself is roughly 8.14 acres. The rezone only covers slightly less than an acre and a half. That is somewhat of an anomaly, and I think that was historically somewhat of a remnant zoning piece that's been carried through the years, including through the adoption of the general plan in 2004. So this is largely a cleanup, making sure that the zoning is consistent with the planned land use designation. This is not real common in our community. Again, it truly is an anomaly. So the application tonight and staff's recommendation is that the council approve the rezone application to allow for the development of the apartment complex. At the last meeting, we discussed the overall design of the apartment complex somewhat of ad nauseum, but for the benefit of the audience, if you can just bear with me extremely quickly. The apartment complex itself, I'll just walk through it really quick. It's going to be gated. It's going to have an access point to Lincoln Avenue. The orange buildings are the 3-story buildings. To give everyone perspective, a 3-story building for an apartment complex would typically generate about 25 dwelling units an acre. Your conventional single-family subdivision, which for the most part pepper our community, are roughly 5 to 6 dwelling units an acre, so that's a little bit more dense than your traditional single family. Your traditional 2-story apartment complexes will range between 12 and 16 dwelling units an acre, so it's going to be a little bit denser than that. And then those buildings highlighted in red are the 2-story buildings. So one of the things that we try to do here is wherever it was closer to single family, we put the 2-story buildings on the interior or the 3-story buildings, so when you're driving down the street, it doesn't feel overwhelming. Here are some of the building elevations. We think that the buildings themselves are extremely of high quality. The applicant is going to propose some slight modifications to these buildings to really enhance the buildings a little bit more than what's even shown right here. And so I will just walk through these really quickly again for the benefit of the audience. So with that being said, that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Before I open this to the public, is there anyone from the council has any questions, comments? I'd open this to the public for any comment that the public may have regarding the proposal as set forward. If you go to the podium, state your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Beverly Jamison, and I just simply have one question on this, as I know frequently when apartments come into 2 and 3 stories, then what they have are balconies that come out, and I wonder how this is going to affect the duplex areas around there. I mean, that's going to look into their backyards, and I would be concerned about that. And I'd also am curious as to the type of landscaping that will be provided to enhance the apartments themselves, and is there going to be an on-site manager, or to assure that the persons living in there are keeping up the property? Are they abiding by the rules that of the neighborhood?
Thank you very much, and we'll address those as answers here after the remaining number of members of the public may speak.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mr. Rodriguez, if we could have you speak to that, probably bringing back up the map to include the parking lot.
I'll try to go down the comments in order. The units themselves on the south side of the building, the map that's shown right here is actually oriented 90 degrees to the it would be to the east. So north is actually this way, south being this way. There's some single family homes on the south side of the property line. The vast majority of those are single story. There are a couple of 2-story homes. Early on, as part of our discussions with the applicant, one of the things that we emphasize is that we did not want windows nor balconies overlooking the backyards of the single family homes. So along the south side of the property, there are no balconies or there are no windows on those sides of the buildings, again, trying to ensure some privacy for the single family homeowners. There are some condos to the, so that would be the west side of the property, which is not shown right here, is that there's an old railroad remnant right-of-way line that's not controlled by the applicant. There is some landscaping there. I don't know what that dimension is off the top of my head, but I believe it's about 60 feet. Above and beyond that, there's a 20-foot setback, which is right there, which is highlighted. So from building to building, you're probably looking between 80 and 85 feet, and there will be landscaping there. There will be some balconies here. However, there's going to be very few balconies, again, because the sides of the buildings, which are the vast majority of them, do not have balconies. Rather, the balconies themselves are going to be facing into other units or into the interior spaces. In terms of the number of trees, we've been working with the applicant ad nauseum to make sure that the actual apartment itself or the complex itself is for the most part an urban forest. I know that I've been trying to get trees absolutely in every little corner. The applicant a couple of times has said, where in the world am I supposed to be putting everything else at? I have to put in trash cans and parking lots and everything else, and you want more trees. And trees bring a lot of value, both aesthetically. They also help in terms of the microclimate, trying to make sure that we avoid the heat island effect. In terms of safety itself, this apartment complex is gated. So it is going to be a gated complex. The only access point in and out of the complex is going to be on Lincoln Avenue. The gates themselves will be at the end of the long driveway. California state law mandates that all apartment complexes with 16 or more units provide an on-site manager. There will be an on-site manager at this complex at all times. Again, it's going to be gated. It's going to have plenty of parking stalls, 172 units with 367 on-site parking spaces, which comes out to, I'm not great at math, but I think it's a little bit more than 2 spaces per unit, which exceeds our code, about 2.2, I think, per unit. So that's a fairly good number, and again, that exceeds our codes. And I believe I probably just went through all of the highlights. But if I didn't, please ask.
I'm just going to ask one more question. So on the south side, the distance between the building and the property line, given that there are parking stalls facing both north and to the south, along with the minimum distance between the stalls, and then up to the building. So all of the pedestrian ingress egress, we're looking at buildings that are probably 100 feet from the property line.
The buildings from the southern property line to the closest part of the building is 72 feet, 75, I believe that is.
Okay.
75. This northern corner building is a little bit closer, but coupled with the backyards of the properties that are there, those properties for the most part average between 15 and 20 feet, plus the 72 feet on the actual site itself. You're probably very close to, not quite 100, but you're pretty darn close.
Okay. Any other members from the public wish to speak to this? If not, seeing none, close the public part of the hearing, bring it back to the council for
Through the mayor,
consideration.
I'll make a motion for staff's recommendation.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. We shall proceed forward with it. Consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are to be considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time that council votes on the motion unless members of the city council, staff, or public request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual action. There's only one item there, and that's our minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving forward to general items. We have our Water Wastewater Treatment Facility Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition Support, or SCADA, presented by Mr. Mike Palucci, Deputy Public Works Director, Utilities.
Very good. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The item you have before you is a request to authorize a professional services contract with Tesco for our SCADA help. But before I get into the issue at hand, I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about what SCADA is, what it does, why it's important, and before we get into the meat and potatoes of this. So SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition, think control and data. So at its very minimalist, it's a computer networked to a piece of equipment. So you have control over that piece of equipment, and you can gather data in that piece of equipment. For an example is our town center fountain. When it was built, it had controls to turn it on and off. Anytime we wanted to turn the fountain on and off, we had to send somebody down to turn it on and off. And so it led to a lot of call-out pay, overtime. There was a lot of labor with that. With a little bit of investment for equipment, we were able to bring that fountain into our SCADA system. And with that, now we can program it to come on every Monday through Friday from 11 to 1 or whatever it is we want to do. Or if we wanted to, any time of the day, both water plants are fully staffed 24/7. So we can call the water plant and say, hey, operator on duty, please turn the fountain on or turn it off. And so it virtually completely eliminated all the labor expense for turning our town center fountain on and off. So SCADA has been around for a while. In Yuba City's example, we've put in our first circuits about the early 1990s. Since then, as the water plants have grown, the population has grown. California is typically kind of a state that enjoys environmental regulation, so that has also grown. SCADA has become more and more important for the efficient operation of the treatment plants, but also for regulatory compliance. And so today we have plants that are 40 years old that are running with a very smaller, much smaller window of error that the operators must comply with. So where we're at today is we have a system that has grown over the last 25 years. Some of the equipment is older and it's operating with newer equipment. That older equipment is becoming obsolete. It's more prone to breakdown, reliability issues. This is a mission critical system that the city relies upon for drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater, and the town fountain. So what does that bring us today? Today, just recently, both of our instrumentation technician positions have been vacated. So we do not have city personnel on staff to maintain this system. Currently, we do have an agreement with Tesco Controls to help us through this period, and the request today is we anticipate it's going to take about 6 months to build our instrumentation team again. So with that, we're looking for Tesco to continue to help the city maintain the system until we get our own staff back on board. So Tesco has a unique experience. They have that unique experience. They have experience with the city's system itself. So whereas they can come in and troubleshoot and fix the problem right away, other companies, they would have to come in and learn this complex system first before then they can fix it. So with that is staff's recommendation to authorize a professional services contract with Tesco in the amount of $100,000 with the interest of in the best interest of the city. So, and with that, I would be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Seeing none, pleasure of the board.
Move to approve the item.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much. And we will be moving on to item number 9. This business from the City Council, appointments to the City of Yuba City boards and commissions. During the last week, actually on Wednesday, the January 27th, and this morning, the Vice Mayor Cleveland and I conducted a number of interviews of individuals willing to fill in on some of our boards and commissions, primarily the Senior Commission and also our Planning Commission due to vacancies. We had a number of applicants for the Planning Commission. It was a very difficult decision to be made after listening and going through the process that we'd gone through of the interviews and reviewing what would be a best fit for the city. The Vice Mayor and I both agreed in separate that Ivan Ryan would be the best suitable person to fill our Planning Commission vacancy. That term will be from today's date to December 31st of 2018. We also interviewed for Senior Commission, and I will tell you, for those of you over the statutory age that you can be called a senior, this isn't seniors in high school. This is for our more, I'm going to be careful with my words. A members of our community that can provide input back to this council regarding senior issues and senior services. We really look to this group as being one of those key instrumental groups that is not an advisory. It's somebody that we look to be able to provide better services through them. And we decided today through our interview process that we would appoint Anthony Curlin from today's date until December the 31st of 2020 to that position, and we are still looking for more individuals to fill vacancies, and certainly look forward to future interviews for that position. That is the recommendation of the screening committee. And we do have one individual wishes to speak from the public, and that was Beverly Jamison. She's also was an applicant for the Planning Commission. So Beverly.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, and citizens of the city of Yuba City. I want to say that this may sound like it's going to be sour grapes, but it really isn't. I have a significant amount of planning experience, having been appointed to the specific plan for West Petaluma and worked on as a planning commissioner for a Central Valley town. And for that, I've learned that as part of your duties, so to speak, you are serve one as someone who works with the city council and makes suggestions to them on items that become before the planning commission, but you're also a servant in a way of the citizens, because you are going to be working with the code enforcement persons and assuring that the ordinances of the city are enforced. And I know that this can be a difficult time because in budgetary problems, there's often not enough code enforcement officers or the funding for them. So I know that the one that we have was recently appointed just a couple of years ago, and I would say, having worked with him on a couple of items, he is making a significant contribution to the community. I would like to congratulate Ivan Ryan on appointment to the Planning Commission, and I would like to again say thank you to Mayor Buckland and Vice Mayor Stan Cleveland for the opportunity to be interviewed for this position and to offer my assistance in any way they see fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beverly. I will say that through the process, we learned a lot about you, and certainly admire things that you've done, and look forward to a relationship as we move forward with the city of Yuba City. So again, Beverly, thank you very much.
To the mayor, first of all, Beverly, I want to say thank you for coming and speaking. I mean, having been mayor of Yuba City twice and serving on the committees as a mayor and vice mayor and making recommendations, I know it's no easy task to go through an interview and then make your recommendations. One of the things that we've always told everybody, whether it's a planning commission, a youth commissioner, senior commission, is that, if you don't get it this time, but please apply again. And definitely, if your heart's here, which it is in the community, your knowledge is here, that's something that the commission can definitely use. So please don't be discouraged if you're not selected. We would definitely encourage you to apply again. So with that, I'll make a motion to accept our mayor's and vice mayor's recommendations for the planning commission as well as the senior commission.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And we'll be moving on to reports from council, and we will start off with Councilmember Didball.
We had a couple of meetings these past 2 weeks. The transit meeting, we have some ongoing projects, and two of the main ones that stood out were the Bogue Park and Ride video surveillance, that they're still working on those. Also the Connect card that's been going on for a while. So hopefully in the next meeting we'll have some future progress on those. Also, I was appointed to vice chairperson for that commission. We also had the Regional Housing Authority. That was actually my first meeting, taking over Stan's position. So I am actually touring the facilities and so forth, so just getting well acquainted with the whole commission and so forth. So I will keep you in progress with those. And the other meeting was the Sutter Animal Services Authority. I was appointed as chairperson. Thank you, Mayor Buckland.
Anytime I can help.
You may say thank you now, but
one of the things that we did talk about is the recruitment for an additional position. The service calls through the animal shelter from 2012, which were 6,200 plus calls with 5 positions. In 2015, those calls went up to 7,200 plus with only 3 positions. So currently they are recruiting for an additional position, and we'll go from there. Other than that, those were the meetings, and I just wanted to go ahead and let folks know that those of you, special River Valley High School students, have probably seen posters up for the anti-bullying forum that will be held tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. That location has been changed to Boyd Hall due to some roof damage. So please make sure that you mark your calendars. It's a very, very important forum that's taking place.
Thank you very much. And moving to Councilmember John Dukes.
I have one meeting to report on. That was the Greater Sacramento special meeting, which was held this morning to amend the bylaws for representation by cities and how those things take place. And I believe that that was approved today by the board. So that's all I had to report at this time.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Cashgill.
Attended the Sacramento Metro Chamber of Commerce dinner with the mayor and Councilmember Dukes, and as well as Mr. Darren Gill, representative of the City of Yuba City. So we had good representation, probably over 1,000 people. And but we were definitely recognized for representing the City of Yuba City. And out of those 1,000 people, I think there's probably only a few that Mr. Gill does not know. I think he knows most everybody there, so that's a good thing.
Always helpful.
Yeah, it's always nice to see the movers and shakers of Sacramento, the CEOs of the hospitals, the companies, and it's nice to see one of our companies, Larry M. Booth, was recognized there as well. So there was quite a bit of folks from Yuba City that was there as represented as well. Sutterbeach Flood Agency, we'll have our meeting next week, so no meeting there. As our executive director did mention, Mike Inamini, we do have a trip planned back to Washington, D.C., leaving on February 29th, which is a travel day. And even though it's a travel day, we get there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We have got 2 meetings set up, one at 5, one at 7. That's definitely one of those marches that gets going. And on the 1st and the 2nd, we leave at 6 o'clock from Washington, D.C. We arrive in Sacramento 11:20 at night. So by the time I get home, I think it'll be about 1 in the morning. But it's definitely, meetings are set up with the key people, which is definitely not. It's definitely not with the staffers. It's definitely with the decision makers. And we hope to walk away with some additional monies to finish everything up. So though it takes time away, and it is definitely a march from sun up to sundown, it's definitely one of those trips that's worth it. So I can report when I definitely couldn't get back from that trip. And with that, that's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. And on to Vice Mayor Stan Cleveland.
Well, I've had a couple of busy weeks. My meetings all seem to have fallen on these 2 weeks. First of all, we went to the Redevelopment Oversight Board. It has to do with when the governor decided to eliminate redevelopment agencies unilaterally, that everybody was left with all this money and projects and stuff to have to figure out how to unwind it and bring it back into the community to where it could be utilized and used in land. So did some of that one of the meetings. As Mayor Buckland has said, we had a couple of board and commission interview meetings. 2 days that we split up the interviews. As a member of the California League of Cities Environmental Quality Committee, I went to the conference in Sacramento. And a lot of the things we're discussing is water supply, literally having to do with the drought situation that we have had, and also looking at the possibility, well, we're going to advocate very strongly for it, reduction in some of the percentage of conservation that we're mandated, and then also trying to get them to recognize that some communities that already voluntarily had people cut back, and they'd already done that. In 2013 was not a good year for them to use as a base year because some of the communities had already cut back. And so we were going to try to get them to recognize that. Discussed a little bit about wastewater, carb credits. That's, I call it kind of funny money or fake money, but it's you can cash it in. Has to do with greening and not non-polluting items and stuff and projects. They're looking at rural communities and small communities actually getting their share of it instead of it all going to the big cities and areas, because they have the political clout and actually allocating a very large amount to the rural communities instead of having so much going toward the larger communities. That looks like it's going to happen. So that's good. And then I went on to the Yuba City Transit, which is actually our bus system. I don't know how many of you actually have the passes that you can ride the bus to school. That they're the ones that provide those passes basically for you to do that. The discount passes. Some of the changes mentioned to happen on the carb credits are actually going to be able to be utilized for our transit to get possibly zero emission buses instead of having to save their money for 3 or 4 years on grants. It may be able to be happening in 1 year for a bus instead of 3 years. So those credits are going to be very important for our rural community and our bus system. Then we went on to the transportation workshop we had last week, the city council. We're also going to have one on February the 23rd. The first one was on the 28th, and it's discussing all the areas, the traffic and what we want improvements on the highways. We discussed the second bridge, the project on 5th Street, and some of the progress we have on that. So we had that. So that was last Thursday. Then also, I don't know if this is part of it, but Chamber of Commerce, they had they're kind of a branch of our city. They work together with us. They had a Friday morning update and discussing the commerce of Yuba City. Then yesterday, I attended my first meeting at FRACMID. It's the Feather River Air Quality Management District. They're the ones that tries to keep people from polluting the air, polluting the water, and people get fines for that. Farmer burns stuff when they're on a non-burn day or they don't have a permit. Many of those types of things. And I walk in the door, and I'm my first meeting. I'm elected to be the chair. I think it was a conspiracy. I'm just kidding. I'd served on it before, so they knew I could handle that. Let's see. And it also ties in with some of the work that I'm going to be doing at the California League of Cities on air quality. And then I also gave an update speech to SIRS. What does that stand for again?
Sons in Retirement.
That's what I keep thinking. Sons in Retirement. And there were about 209 of these gentlemen inside of the room that had a breakfast, and I gave transportation updates, recent actions of the council, and then also some of the dreams that we have or things we're going to be attempting to do and accomplish. And got some very good questions from them, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. So a bunch of vibrant guys in there. The average age in there of the 208 that were there is 76 years old. There are a lot of them that are actually in their 90s, very active in the community and making decisions and giving advice. Don't ever discount some of these seniors that are in their 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. You get a lot of wisdom out of them, and you avoid some of the pitfalls that you can fall into because they did it. They'll let you know, be careful or stay away from things. So they're a great resource in our community to get to know. That's it.
Thank you very much. When I retired from the police department after 32 years, I was recruited to SIRS. I am the teenager in the room. And I
Bring the ages way down.
I bring the average way low. So without me, I believe it's 84. So, but it's a great group to belong to. I don't know what I'd do without it. Every Monday, first Monday of the month. What a kick. Attended the Regional Waste Management Authority meeting. The decision made at that meeting was to send back some recommendations to our jurisdictions to look at how green waste is being handled and the ongoing process of how green waste will be being handled by our local waste management company, which is Recology. we relied on information at that meeting provided to us through a study done by Sloan Vasquez. The authorities' hands are fairly, the authority is fairly limited, only being able to send individual decisions back to the participating councils and supervisory boards for the counties and cities. So that will be a topic of further discussion by these boards, and we are slated for
March 1st, Mayor.
March 1st for that discussion here. Also attended the SACOG, our board of directors meeting, and I'm sorry, for the students that are here, that one of our regional boards is the Sacramento Area Council of Government. It is the body that looks at distribution of transportation monies and everything else that comes through attainment of air quality. We have to have transportation plans for the region, and the region is a 6-county region to include part of El Dorado, Placer, Sacramento, Yolo, Sutter, and Yuba counties. So it's a rather complex board. There's 29 directors. I'm just one of the lowly directors there that make decisions, but also serving for my second year, I'll be chair of the Innovation Task Force for the greater regional efforts in innovation. Also attended the Sacramento Metro Chamber, and once again want to shout out for Mr. Larry Booth and that company that has been around for 9 years in the city of Marysville. They are an institution and certainly a well-placed construction company in the United States. They handle projects from coast to coast. They are a great resource to have here. So that was it for boards and commissions. I want to thank again River Valley High School for being here, certainly for the leadership that mandates that you attend some type of extra credit efforts, and your academic advisor is also the blood drive advisor for River Valley High School. So thank you very, very much for everything that you do, and certainly leading your students to come to this meeting.
Through the mayor.
I believe that we'll sign your sheets if you're kind to us after the meeting, too.
Once it's all done, we're almost done. And also to Troop 30, our Boy Scout troop that was here led us to the pledge. Certainly thank you very much for coming, and to the leadership for bringing them here. I would like to close this meeting in memory of two different people. Harold Stephen McNally, or as we all knew him as Hal. Hal's been around for an ancient term, starting a business, I believe, in Marysville to begin with, moving some of his business operations into Yuba City as we grew here, and certainly has been instrumental. His family still runs the appliance store on Plymouth Street and over on D Street in Marysville. Just a great institution, and Hal was somebody that never looked down on what was happening, always had a positive and bright outlook on what he could provide for the community, and certainly was instrumental in building both of these towns into what they are today. And also one of our former mayor's daughters, young daughter in her late 30s, passed away down in Tustin, but Tiffany Papa George passed away. So in memory of both Hal and Tiffany, I'd like to adjourn this meeting.
We also have some pins, Yuba City pins, that you can each snag one. Out here as you come up and get your signatures.